In a world where everyone is trying to leave some kind of visual mark on themselves, staying unmarked has become the loudest statement in the room. And behind that statement, there's usually something much deeper at play than just a fear of needles. There's a specific profile that shows up in people who consistently pause on permanent decisions. 4 traits, all of them documented, none of them obvious. The first one, you can actually feel your future self. Neuroscientist Hal Hershfield at UCLA put people in brain scanners. He showed them images of themselves right now and 30 years from now. For most people, the brain activity when viewing the future self looks nearly identical to viewing a complete stranger. Your brain literally files the person you'll be at 70 under other people. In participants with strong future self continuity, it looked different. The brain responded to the future self the way it responds to the present self. Same neural activity, same sense of recognition. Hershfield then measured what these people actually did with their money, their time, their decisions. They saved more. They waited longer for better outcomes. They were less likely to trade something large and distant for something small and immediate. When you picture yourself at 70 and something in you responds to that person as real, not as an abstract concept, but as someone you already know, that's not sentiment. That's a measurable difference in how your prefrontal cortex handles future identity, and it shapes every permanent decision you make, usually without you noticing. The second trait, your body doesn't feel like a surface. Philosopher Thomas Metzinger spent years studying what he called the minimal phenomenal self, the most basic layer of what it means to experience being a self at all. At the foundation of that experience is body ownership, the sense that this physical form isn't an object you inhabit, it's you. For some people, the body functions more like a canvas, something that can be marked, curated, updated. For others, it's an anchor. Any permanent alteration lands not as decoration, but as a modification of something already complete. Neither is wrong, they're different relationships to the same body. But if you've ever felt something particular about the idea of changing your physical form permanently, and that feeling wasn't about social pressure or what anyone else would think, that's the boundary you were actually feeling. The third trait, you feel the weight of a locked door. The late Daniel Kahneman won the Nobel Prize partly for his work on how the brain processes losses differently from gains. What gets less attention is a more specific pattern, how some brains respond not just to loss, but to the loss of options, the closing of a possibility, the decision that stays made. The dorsolateral prefrontal cortex acts as a cognitive brake, and research shows it becomes especially active when people evaluate decisions that are difficult or impossible to reverse. A tattoo is the ultimate locked door. When your brain slows down here, it's computation, not caution. The fourth trait, you carry your identity without needing to broadcast it. In the 1980s, psychologist Mark Leary developed sociometer theory. Self-esteem, he argued, isn't really about how good you feel about yourself in isolation. It functions as a real-time gauge of social acceptance, a biological alarm system for belonging or rejection. What varies is how much external input that gauge needs to stay calibrated. Some people regulate their sense of identity through visible signals, what they display, how they mark themselves as part of a group or aesthetic. The identity points outward.
Others carry theirs without needing to transmit it. The signal points inward, and it doesn't need the surface of the body to say anything on its behalf. Now, obviously, there are plenty of exceptions. Plenty of heavily tattooed people have extraordinary future self-continuity, profound sensitivity to irreversibility, and identity so internal it never needs external confirmation. These traits aren't a diagnosis, they're a pattern worth recognizing. And if you recognized yourself in them, here's what that actually means in practice. The same sensitivity to irreversibility that makes you pause on a tattoo is operating when you evaluate a career change, a relationship, a business decision. The future self-continuity that makes 70 feel real is an advantage in any room where everyone else is thinking in quarters and you're thinking in decades. The internal referencing means your sense of who you are doesn't depend on external validation to stay stable when things get difficult. The pause was never the interesting part. What you do with the mind that created it, that's where it gets interesting. What's the one permanent decision you've held off on the longest? Tell me in the comments. I'm genuinely curious whether the pattern holds outside the obvious examples. If this gave you a different way of looking at how you make decisions, subscribe. We go deep here. And if it landed, hit like. It helps this reach someone who spent years calling themselves indecisive.